I want to tell you about my mother-in-law, Stella. She was born in 1926, a clever girl. By the age of 17, she was still in school, trying to decide whether to go into astronomy or medicine. And it was as she walked home from school one day in 1943 that she was stopped and taken by a group of soldiers. Taken from her home, from her family, taken to a farm in Austria for forced labour. She was very fortunate. She was given to a kind family who treated her very well, and they actually became lifelong friends. At the end of the war, she ended up in a refugee camp in Munich, and there she met Edward, Ted, and he became her husband and the father of her children. And in 1949, they came and settled in England in a little mining town in Nottinghamshire. And Ted went down the mine, where he lost an eye in an accident. And sadly, Stella didn't become a doctor or an astronomer. She worked night shifts in the local Aristotle factory. And they worked very hard, and they saved, and they bought themselves a very small house, and they managed to raise 4 children there. She was in her 60s when I first met her, and one of the first things that she said to me was that she wouldn't be around for much longer. She just survived a 3rd heart attack. Well, 30 years later, sadly a couple of years ago, we lost her at the age of 95. She was the strongest, the kindest, the most loving, most generous woman I think I ever met, and fearless in defence of her family. The reason I'm telling you about her is that the street that she was taken from was in Odessa, in southern Ukraine. And if she was at all typical of the character of Ukrainians, then it's no wonder that Putin is struggling to overcome them. I'll come back to Ukraine in a moment, but first I want to tell you about something that happened to me in February this year. In fact, it was the night of the flooding from Storm Franklin. We live in a little house right in the middle of Newtown against the river. We have a flood wall that separates us from the riverbank, and when we get a lot of rain around Newtown, the water comes up, and sometimes it comes near the bottom of our flood wall, but it's never been an issue really to us in the past until that evening. And at 5:30 the rain had stopped, and I went into the backyard, and the water was level with the bottom of the flood wall, the highest we'd ever seen it, but it's still got about 1 metre to go before it comes over the top, no problem, until I looked down and noticed that it's starting to seep in. It's coming under the wall into the backyard and would eventually come into the house. This is very scary. I'm very frightened now. I call my husband and my son, and we'll start bailing with buckets. And it soon becomes evident that we're not up to the job. So I get onto Facebook, I put up a message, anybody free to come and help us, please bring your buckets. Within 10 minutes there are knocks on the door, and friends and complete strangers are arriving, armed with buckets, hot tub pumps, 8 of them, and we had a team in the backyard dealing with the water, and another team in the house taking everything upstairs from downstairs. And they do a fantastic job, and they keep the water at bay. And we get to midnight and the water is still coming up, and it's come to within a centimetre of the top of the wall. And whilst we're keeping the level down behind it in the yard, it's clear that if it comes up much more, it's going to come over the top of the wall, and there'll be nothing we can do to hold it back. And at that moment, I thought back to the early evening when there were just the 3 of us out there, and how scared I was. And then I realised that at this point the fear has gone. I was no longer afraid. What I was overwhelmed by the joy of being surrounded by friends and strangers who were so willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in defence of our home. And I thought, this is just the building, it's really not that important. As I said, I think that the Ukrainian people, like Stella, are showing themselves to be made of stern stuff. But they are standing alone against the terrifying flood of Russian military might that threatens to engulf them. I'm sure that you're all praying for a speedy settlement in the Ukrainian crisis and for the Ukrainian people. And please carry on doing that. But you must do more than just pray, because Christianity is a faith of action as well as prayer. Jesus was prayerful, but he was also a man of action. We must all do something. I can't tell you what that is. That's for you, your means and your conscience to decide. But we must do something. We all have to do something to show the people of Ukraine that they do not stand alone.